Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Parenting Lab. As we get started today, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it and answer yourself honestly, because I'm going to ask you some questions that I have asked myself over the years. So I'm genuinely wondering if you have had some of these same thoughts. Have you ever had a moment in your parenting where you wondered, why does part of me want to be calm and connected, and another part of me just wants to shut down or walk away? Why do I crave closeness with my kids, but feel overwhelmed the moment they actually need me? Why do I logically know that this phase or this behavior is developmentally normal, but emotionally I feel like I'm at my breaking point? Why does one part of me feel proud of how much healing I've done, but another part feels disappointed that I'm not further along? Why does my body react like something bad is about to happen, even when my mind knows it isn't? Or why do I give my child so much grace, but struggle to offer any to myself? If any of these questions landed or felt familiar at all, I am right there with you. What you're experiencing when these kinds of questions keep you up at night isn't a lack of discipline or patience or emotional intelligence. It's an internal conflict, like an emotional tug of war between different wants, different needs, and fears. Parenting has a way of surfacing this conflict more than almost anything else because it doesn't just ask for our skills, it asks for our nervous system. And when the nervous system senses threat, whether that threat is real or perceived, it doesn't consult our parenting books or our best intentions. It calls in the parts of us that learned a long time ago how to keep us safe. It has a way of revealing versions of ourselves we didn't even know were still there. Versions that don't show up at work or with friends or even in our adult relationships in the same way, but put us in a moment where our child is melting down or rejecting us or ignoring us, pushing against our limits, and suddenly something else steps forward. And when that happens, it can feel disorienting, like you're watching yourself from the outside, like you lose access to the calm, grounded version of yourself and suddenly find yourself reacting in ways you don't recognize or even like. When we find ourselves in that situation, most of us do the same thing. We judge ourselves. What's wrong with me? Why can't I get it together? Why am I like this? We label these reactions as bad parenting. We tell ourselves we need to fix it, control it, get rid of it. But what if these moments aren't proof that you're broken or a sign that you've failed? What if they're actually showing you something important about how your inner world is organized? Today, I want to introduce you to a framework that helps make sense of all of this. A way of understanding yourself that doesn't rely on shame or criticism, but instead on curiosity and compassion. It's called parts work. And before you start to worry, this isn't about diagnosing yourself or labeling every reaction. It's about learning how to meet these different versions of you with awareness so you can respond rather than react. So let's talk about what I mean when I say parts work. This idea comes from a therapeutic model called internal family systems, or IFS. It's been used in trauma therapy and attachment work and nervous system healing. You may have heard of it before, but I don't want you to be concerned. You don't need to memorize the theory or the terms I'm going to share with you today to really feel the relief of it. Okay, so essentially, parts work is very simple. We are not made up of one single consistent personality. We're actually made up of parts. Different inner voices, reactions, and impulses that show up in different moments, especially when we're under stress. If that sounds familiar, it's because you already experience this every day, and we're actually using this language all the time. Just last week, I was talking to a friend about making plans, and my contribution to the conversation was that part of me wanted to go out and do something, but part of me just kind of wanted to be home in my pajamas. So it's interesting that this language is something we're actually using all the time, right? A part of you wants to stay patient, a part of you wants a solution right away. A part of you feels confident and capable, but a part of you also feels overwhelmed and unsure. Parts work doesn't ask which one is the real you, because the answer is all of them. Every part of you exists for a reason, even the parts you don't like, the ones you wish would go away, even the parts that show up in ways that you might even later regret. In the IFS model, we don't see these parts as flaws or dysfunction. We see them as adaptive. They formed in response to something. often early in life, to help you cope, survive, belong, stay safe. So when a part of you reacts strongly in parenting, it's not because you're failing in the present. It's often because something inside you learned a long time ago that this is the best way to get through moments that feel overwhelming or threatening in some way. In parenting, especially moments of disconnection, defiance, rejection, can feel incredibly threatening to the nervous system. Not because your child is doing something wrong, but because those moments tap into some very old wiring. Parts work gives us a way to slow this down. Instead of asking, why am I like this? We can start to ask, what part of me is showing up right now? And what is it trying to do for me? That question can change everything. Because when we stop fighting our reactions and start getting curious about them, the intensity goes down. The system doesn't need to escalate to get our attention. And this is why parts work can be so powerful for parents. It helps us understand that inner conflict doesn't mean there's something wrong or that we're bad parents. It just means there are multiple needs inside us, all trying to be heard all at the same time. When we learn to relate to our parts and lean in with curiosity instead of judgment, we start to regain choice in how we respond, how we repair, and especially how we talk to ourselves in hard moments. That ability to choose our responses with intention is what really supports our healing. In parts work, our inner world is often organized into a few main types of parts. And I want to introduce these to you. Not that you need to memorize them, but so that you can start to recognize what's happening inside you when things are getting hard, and then give you the language to express it. So the first group is called managers. Managers are the protective parts of us that try to keep life running smoothly. They're proactive, organized, vigilant, and focused on preventing problems before they happen. Their goal is very simple. Don't let things fall apart. This might be the part of you that over-prepares or over-explains or constantly scans for what could be going wrong. It can also look like perfectionism or rigidity. These parts show up as the planner, the researcher, the rule setter, the one who's always thinking 3 steps ahead. They care deeply about your child and often carry that heavy sense of responsibility. Protective parts often formed early in life, especially in environments where we had to grow up quickly, be responsible, or manage other people's emotions. And when you become a parent, those same parts often step forward again because parenting feels high stakes. But these parts aren't the enemy. They're trying to help. Managers are the parts that push you to read the books, listen to the podcasts, and do the work. And while they can be incredibly helpful, they do have that potential to become rigid or anxious when they feel like they're losing control. But when protective parts get overwhelmed, or when their strategies stop working, that's often when another group of parts jumps in. And these are called firefighters. Firefighters are reactive parts. Their job is to put out emotional fires as quickly as possible. They're less concerned with long-term lessons or parenting philosophy and more focused on immediate relief. Their job is to make the discomfort stop now. In parenting, firefighters often show up as yelling, snapping, threatening consequences you don't mean, or emotionally checking out. They might also show up later, after the kids are asleep, through numbing behaviors, scrolling, snacking, binge watching, anything that helps the intensity die down. Firefighters aren't trying to make things worse. They don't come online because you don't care. They're responding to a system that's feeling flooded. When the emotion gets too big, too fast, your system needs an escape plan, and the firefighter steps in to help you survive the moment. And then, often underneath both these protective and reactive parts are the most tender parts of all, and these are called the exiles. They're often framed as versions of our inner child. I think it's important to clarify the language here because the word exile sounds kind of harsh. Exile in this framework doesn't mean that these parts are gone or that they're being punished in some way. It means we push them away because they hurt too much. Exiles are the part of us that carry old pain, feelings of being unseen, unheard, unsafe, unlovable, or alone. Parts that feel small, invisible, or easily hurt. They're often younger parts, formed early in life, and they hold experiences that felt too overwhelming to process at the time. Managers work hard to keep exiles from getting activated, and firefighters rush in when exiles break through. These parts often don't show up directly in parenting. Instead, they're protected by these other parts. But when your child rejects you, ignores you, or pulls away, suddenly it's not about the moment, it's about something deeper, something old. When these exiles are activated, the system goes on high alert. A child's no can feel like rejection. A child's dysregulation can feel like danger. And a child's independence can feel like loss. Not because you're fragile, but because these moments touch places inside you that learned a long time ago what it meant to feel alone or unsupported. Now, here's something important to understand. None of these parts are bad, and none of them are trying to sabotage you. They're all actually trying to help in the only ways they know how. When we don't understand parts, we tend to fight them. We shame the reactive part, we push away the vulnerable part, and we overwork the protective part. But parts work invites us to do something different, to slow down, to notice who is stepping forward, and to ask, with curiosity, what is this part trying to protect right now? And when we're able to do that, parenting stops being a battle between who we want to be and who we are. We stop trying to eliminate the parts and instead start learning how to lead them. So, what does this look like in real life? Imagine your child is pushing back on a limit. Maybe they're ignoring you, talking back, or melting down again. First, your manager steps in. It reminds you of your values. You try to stay calm. You explain, you reason, you hold the boundary, but the moment keeps escalating. Your body starts to tense, your heart rate maybe picks up, and somewhere inside, an exile gets activated. Maybe the part that feels disrespected or powerless or ignored. And the moment stops feeling manageable, and now it's starting to feel personal. And that is when the firefighter jumps in. Maybe you raise your voice. Maybe you shut down. Maybe you end the conversation abruptly or threaten a consequence you don't really want to enforce. And afterward, when things are quiet again, the manager comes back online. Why did I react like that? Oh, I know better. Tomorrow, I will maintain control. And this is the cycle so many parents are stuck in. Not because they lack skill or insight, but because different parts are taking turns driving without anyone really in charge. Parts work slows this down. It helps us recognize when a manager is getting overwhelmed, when an exile is being activated, and when a firefighter is trying to put the pain out. And when we see that happening, we're so much more able to pause and repair and respond with intention rather than getting swept up in the cycle again. Now, one of the reasons parts work is so healing, especially for parents, is that it changes what we focus on when things get hard. Instead of trying to fix ourselves, we start to understand ourselves. There are three main ways that this work supports healing. First, parts work reduces shame. Just like we've mentioned before, it takes you from asking what's wrong with me to asking which part of me is activated right now. And that small reframe can be incredibly regulating. When we are able to understand that our reactions are coming from parts that are developed to protect us, we start seeing our nervous system as just trying to do its job, although imperfectly, but always with intention. We stop seeing ourselves as the problem, and that shame starts to lose its grip because shame can't heal anything, but understanding can. Second, parts work creates space and choice. When you can recognize, a firefighter just took over, you're less likely to spiral into guilt. When you can see that a manager is working overtime, you're more able to soften instead of push harder. And when you realize an exile has been activated, you can respond with care instead of avoidance. You're less likely to be swept up in the reaction of it. There's just a little more room to pause, to breathe, and choose to respond instead of react. Now, that space doesn't mean you'll never get triggered, but it does mean you're more likely to repair and less likely to stay stuck in self-criticism afterward. And the third part of this is that parts work builds compassion for both you and for your child. When you're able to understand your own inner system, it becomes easier to understand your child's behavior too. You begin to see both of you as having nervous systems that get overwhelmed, parts that react, and needs that deserve care. This is where real connection happens, not through perfection, but through presence and understanding and repair. Parts work isn't asking you to eliminate the parts of you that struggle. It's helping you learn how to lead them, right? Through awareness and intention. So if parts work is new to you, I promise it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to perfectly identify every part. You don't need to relive your childhood, and you don't need to fix anything in the moment. The goal is awareness and relationship, not control. If you feel the need to control this new information or start implementing it right away, that's probably a manager part coming through. So let's talk about what we can do to start integrating parts work into our everyday parenting. The first step is to name the part without judgment. Instead of saying, I'm losing it, try saying, a part of me is feeling overwhelmed right now. That small reframe creates distance. It reminds your nervous system that you are more than the reaction. You are the one noticing it. You can do this silently, or you can say it out loud if it helps. And you don't really even need to know if it's a manager or a firefighter at the beginning. Just naming that the experience is happening is enough. The second step is to get curious about what that part is trying to do. Every part has a job, even the ones that show up in ways you don't like. So you might ask, what is this part worried will happen if I don't step in? Or what is it trying to protect me from right now? You don't need to answer immediately. Sometimes the question itself can be very regulating. The third step is to acknowledge. And here's the kicker: to acknowledge and then to thank the part. Now, this feels really weird at first, especially if the part just yelled or shut down. I know it seems 100% counterintuitive to thank yourself for yelling at your child. But remember, intention and behavior are not the same thing. We can thank the part for its intent to protect us, even if we don't like the behavior. So this inner dialogue might sound like, I see you. I know what you're trying to do. I see that you're trying to help. Thank you for stepping in. When parts feel acknowledged, they tend to soften. The fourth step is to bring safety into the body. Parts don't just live in our thoughts. They live in our entire nervous system. There are tons of grounding tools that can help bring you out of your headspace and back into your body. This might be as simple as pausing to take a breath, or feeling the weight of your hand on your chest, or just connecting to your senses, whatever works for you. These small cues tell your system that you're here in this moment and that you're not in danger. And finally, when it feels appropriate, start to model this for your child. Now, this doesn't mean over-explaining or putting adult emotions onto them. It just is as simple as, a part of me just got really overwhelmed and I'm working on calming it down. This teaches emotional awareness and repair without the blame, and it shows your child that feelings don't make us bad or unsafe. Parts work isn't about being perfectly regulated. It's about awareness. And if we've learned anything at all about healing, it's that awareness is what actually changes things. It just takes a little time. Before we end, I want to tell you what I hope this episode does for you. I hope it gives you a different way to understand yourself, not that it becomes another thing to do. What we've been talking about today is a framework that helps make sense of why you can want two opposite things at the same time, why you can know better and still react, or why parenting can feel so destabilizing even when you're deeply committed to doing it differently. So think back to those questions I asked at the beginning of this episode. Those moments of inner conflict aren't evidence that you're failing. They're moments where different parts of your system, your mind, your body, your heart, are responding to stress, protection, and old learning, often all at once. When you're able to understand that, it becomes easier to slow down, to repair without self-attack, to hold boundaries without turning against yourself afterward. This work doesn't ask you to get rid of your reactions or suppress the parts of you that struggle. It's actually just the opposite. It asks you to notice what's happening inside you with a little more clarity, a little more curiosity, and a little less judgment. And that matters because parents who understand their inner world are able to respond with more steadiness, not because they're calmer people or better parents, but because they're less afraid of what's happening inside them. So, if you take anything at all from this episode, I hope it's this. When a moment feels hard, something inside you is trying to help. Your job isn't to shut it down, it's to understand it so that you can actually start to change and transform. If you are interested in learning more about parts work and digging deeper into managers and firefighters and exiles, Drop me a yes in the comments and we can revisit this topic again. I also want to let you know that we have a new Facebook group that we've created, and I would love for you to join me in that space. I'm so excited to build a community where parents can come together for support and coaching and connection as we navigate parenting together. I hope you take the time to recognize some of your parts this week, and I will see you here again next time, where we'll continue to explore the art and science of parenting and put your parenting to the test. Take care, everyone.